Welcome back everybody, my name is Philip and today I'm going to show you that sometimes you don't have to go far to take great images. Let me show you how I took this image of my dog in my backyard and then took it from a normal image to a really beautiful, colorful portrait of that dog. Now before we jump into Photoshop, let's run the intro and then let's crush that. Alright guys, so let's jump right into Photoshop. Now I have a couple of issues with this image, and namely being, if I take a brush and just show you, bear with me here, so like a so and a here and at that, I have a couple of issues being that I don't like that this foreground is completely washed out. I can't actually see anything in here. And also I want to add some more red tone to the background of that image because it's nice and blurred, but it's a bit boring. Further, I want to add some lens flare so that it looks like there are actually more objects than they are in the background. It's just going to make it pop a little bit more. And lastly, I want to make sure that the attention is actually on our dog here, and especially on the eye of the dog because it's really crisp, sharp, and nicely in focus. Well then, I would say let's get started with that. Let's just remove all that stuff we have done here. And we're going to start with the grass, then go to the background, add the couple of lens flares, change the tone, and lastly we're going to add a vignette to make sure the attention is on the eye of that dog. Now let's start with the grass, as I said, and first of all it's far too bright, right? I mean, as you can see nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a simple curve adjustment layer and I'm going to drag the curve down. I'm going to drag it down as far as I can until I actually can see the grass to some extent, to maybe something like that. Maybe not as strong, okay, something like that. So at least now I can see some color again, and I can even see some shapes, I guess, of the grass. But the problem, of course, is now we don't see the rest of the dog anymore. So let's invert our layer mask. You can do this by hitting Command or Ctrl+I on your keyboard, and this will hide the effect. And now you can use a white brush to bring the effect out wherever you need to. Right? So I'm going to take my brush, I'll make it nice and large to something like that. And for these things, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit now. And I'm going to start painting in, maybe with an opacity of 20%. I'm going to paint in the sort of reduced brightness into my image. So I'm going to do this slowly and step by step. Let's maybe increase our opacity to 40%. Okay, and every time I go over now this area, I'm going to add this particular brightness reduction to my image. Just like that. Awesome, here we go. Okay, so with a couple of seconds, actually, we have at least taken all that heat out of the grass, and we have made it nice and visible so that now we can start working with it. The problem is that it's very saturated, right? So you look at the image and right away you can see it because that's like the most saturated part of the image, and it's quite a large part as well. So I want to make sure I actually desaturate it a little bit just to take the attention from that grass away. I can do that simply by adding a hue saturation layer and reducing the saturation to maybe something like, just something like this. That's already not bad. So let's zoom a little bit back in here, hit Command and I on the keyboard, and again I'm going to selectively draw in where I feel like the saturation is far too bright. And as we know, in our case, that's going to be the grass here, especially that one in the background here. I'm just going to get rid of this ever so slightly. Okay, I think that's not bad. So now at least we have grass that you can see, so you know it's grass, because before it could have been anything really, but it's just a little bit more visible, less washed out, but also not too visible to take all the attention away. Awesome. We can always come back to the grass later once we work on the other parts of the image if we feel like we can still see too much of it. That's the beauty of Photoshop. You just come back to the stuff later whenever you feel like. Now let's get going and add the colors to our background here, right? As I said, I want to add some more red tone and feeling to our image because it's nice and sunny, so why wouldn't we? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curve adjustment layer, and in that curve adjustment layer I'm going to change from the RGB channel up to the red. And the red curve I'm just going to take and drag it up a little bit. I don't want to go overkill, I don't want to go that way, that's far too much obviously. I'm just going to increase it ever so slightly to something like this maybe. Like before, I'm going to hide the effect now, hitting Command and I on my keyboard, and with my brush, and especially zoomed out again so that I can see what I'm doing on the greater scale of things, I'm going to now start and bring that red into my image. And I don't actually mind if I bring a little bit of that red into the dog itself, because I mean, why not? You know, I don't mind. I can always remove it later if I feel like it doesn't fit. But as I remember, I think I didn't mind at all, and it looked actually quite nice. Okay, so now we have added this red in there, and as we are adding the effects slowly to our image, you can't actually see them right away, but if I switch it on and off, you see that in the background we have now this nice reddish tone to our image, which is something I really, really like. So let's have a look. Do we want to put it somewhere else? I think it's okay. We might add it a little bit to the fur here, just because we can, and it's Photoshop and we can do whatever we feel like. But I think apart from that, I'm gonna stop here with the red color. As I said, once I add the vignette, we can add more or less depending on what we wanna do. So let's make sure that we actually add some more stuff in the background. So what you can see here, for instance, let me show you, let me zoom out a little bit and then create a new layer quickly just to show you. There are these sort of blurred things here in the background, right? And these are obviously objects, and because of the depth of field, they just blur out, which is an awesome effect, but it's not very pronounced, so it's not very strong in this case. And I feel the background could need a little bit more of interesting stuff. So I'm going to add some interesting stuff. Now what I want to add is a simple lens flare. And a simple lens flare, if you take your camera and you shoot straight into the sun, on the edges of your lens, sometimes you get these kind of circles, right? And these circles usually are quite awesome. But in this case, I'm going to use them and put them in the background and make them look like they were objects that are now being blurred out largely. So let me show you how to do that. The cool thing is there's an easy filter for that. The bad thing is it's quite intrusive. So normally what you would have to do is you have to have a layer with information on it, right? So for instance, if I want to do that, then I need to have a so-called stamp visible. So I'm going to copy every adjustment we have made currently onto one separate layer. I can do this if I hit on my keyboard Command or Control on the Windows, Command Alt Shift and E, and this will create a stamp visible. So now we have all the adjustments on a separate layer. It's like a fresh picture from that point onwards. All right. So let's put that back where it belongs. Now the problem is I have to take this, go to top filter and go down to render and then down here to lens flare. And lens flare lets you simply add this particular lens effect, or this kind of, you know, you can see these things here, these kind of bubbles, right? Lets you add them to the image, which is awesome. But of course, if I were to put it here, for instance, right, and I hit OK, now I have this lens flare on the image, but it's like on the image. I can't move it around anymore. It's difficult to change colors of it and stuff like that. So it's really intrusive and doesn't really help much. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trick the system a little bit. I'm going to create a new layer by hitting Command or Control, Alt, Shift and N on my layer, on my keyboard. And now I have a new layer. So what I can do with that is I'm going to fill that layer with black. You can just hold Shift and Backspace, choose black in the little drop-down menu right here and hit the OK button. So now I have a black layer, which is awesome because now I can go to Filter, I can go down to Render, and I can go down to Lens Flare. And now I have the chance to add the lens flare to this particular black layer, right? Which is exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and place it maybe somewhere like here. I'm interested in these bubbles on the top left-hand side here. And I'm going to hit the OK button. Okay, so now we have that. And now with that layer selected, I'm going to change the blend from normal over to screen. And screen is essentially going to remove all the dark parts and only leave the bright parts, meaning it's only going to leave our lens flares. So if I were to hit the V button now, which is the move tool, I can now move stuff around. You can see that I actually have the power of moving my lens flares around on my image, meaning I can now reposition them, recolor them, whatever I have to do. It's quite awesome and quite a neat thing to know, I suppose. So I'm interested in these top bubbles right here. So I'm going to place them somewhere like this, maybe. I'm going to hit the Enter button. And now I want to get rid of the actual light source, which is in the lower right-hand corner, as well as this tiny thing here on the top left. So I'm going to create a layer mask on this layer and gonna take a big black brush, I'm going to take a big black brush and I'm going to remove this particular stuff from my image. So with an opacity of 100%, I'm just going to remove everything I'm not interested in, just like that. You can go away as well. Awesome. So I really just want to have these lens flares and actually nothing else from this particular adjustment layer. Now I can use that and drag it around to wherever I feel like. So I'm going to leave it right here. And then I'm going to go with that selected to Filter and then down to Blur and then Gaussian Blur. Because I'm going to have to make it fit into the background. Right now it stands out far too much. So let's blur the hell out of it. Let's go and blur to something like that maybe. Maybe a little bit, no, actually that was not bad. Let's do it to something like this. Awesome, so now we have blurred it out, and if I now switch it on or off, you can see we have just added a tiny thing. It might not make a big difference, but for me it's always the little things, right? And it just fills the background with something. It makes it less boring, because otherwise there's just nothing, right? And switching that on and off, I'm actually quite happy with that. Now, the only thing is I can still see there's a tiny patch of stuff here. I don't want that. Okay, awesome. So now we have a little bit of more lens flare in the background. We could now, if we wanted to, duplicate that by hitting Command or Control and J on our keyboard and move the copy around to any other position. We could turn it around if we wanted to maybe something like that, and place another one here. Just that there is something on the top part right here as well. And this way we have even more stuff in the background. But you know, that's completely up to you. Your imagination is the limit, I suppose. Awesome, so now we are already nearly there. So we have added stuff to the background, we have added the tone, we have made sure that the grass is not jumping in our face the moment we look at that image. Now it's time to make sure the attention is on the eye of the dog. So it's time to darken the edges and brighten the center, something I mostly do in my Photoshop, well, in my processings and also in my tutorials. So let's get going, and the way I'm going to do this is by adding a simple curve adjustment layer. I'm going to drag it down. And I'm going to drag it down to the point that I think, okay, the surrounding is quite dark enough. Maybe something like that. I'm going to invert that. No, actually, I'm not going to invert it. I'm going to reduce increase my brush size to something matte, maybe something like that. And I'm going to use a white brush now with an opacity of 30% to bring out the brightness, bring the brightness back, I suppose, in my image. So I'm just going to start drawing into the center area right here. And my computer has to think about these kind of things a lot lately, because first of all, I have to take a black brush. That's going to help so much more. You wouldn't even believe. Okay, so I'm going to continue just to draw this kind of effect in here slowly and slowly and ever so slowly. I'm going to bring you back once it's done. Awesome, so now we have this tiny vignette going on here. So you can see if I switch it on and off, we definitely have darkened down the edges and the attention is already more on the center of the image, which is our dog. So maybe we want to make sure that the eye of that dog is just a little bit more, how would you say, jumping out of the image, I suppose. So we have a couple of ways to do that. I'm quickly going to create a new curve adjustment layer, increase the brightness just a little bit, just to something like that maybe. I'm going to hit Command or Ctrl+I on my keyboard to hide that effect. And now with the white brush, I'm going to go over the areas which are already bright in the eye. I'm going to bring the additional brightness out only in those areas. So essentially, I'm just enhancing what's already there, and that's going to make it at least a little bit more believable, especially if we don't go crazy, right? So we don't want to go completely nuts. We just want to enhance it just a little bit, just like that. That's already enough for my personal taste. But of course, feel free to make it as bright as you want, right? I mean, that's really completely up to you. Awesome. So theoretically, we could now say, okay, we're kind of done. We have done what we wanted to do in that particular case. I mean, if it's me, I probably want to reduce the brightness in the fur part of the doggy just a little bit. So I'm going to do like another curve adjustment layer. I'm going to take a nice large brush, and with an opacity of 30%, I'll just reduce the brightness here in this little face place area just a little bit, because that fur is quite shiny, which is good. I think dogs are healthy with the fur shining. But apart from that, yeah, that just takes a little bit of the glow out of his face, which is not bad. Now, if you felt like we can see if we want to add further vignettes, we could just make another stamp visible by hitting Command or Control, Alt, Shift, and E on the keyboard. And then go back to the camera raw filter just to use a different kind of vignette in this case, something where we have to do less manual work. So we can go to the camera raw filter, we go to the FX button, and now we just see if we like the sort of, pre-prepared post-crop vignette that comes with the camera raw filter, maybe just to something like that. And I don't actually think that's too bad. Let's increase that feathering a little bit. I like that. And now that we have done that, I'm also going to increase the saturation for the dog part a little bit more. So I'm going to create a hue saturation layer and just bring up the saturation, just maybe to something like that. Not too crazy. I'm going to hit Command and I to hide the effect, and I'm just going to bring it out in certain areas. So you see, I'm the worst with these kind of things, because once I start, I can never really stop. It's not that easy just to stop editing. But eventually you're going to have to decide for yourself, yes, it's good enough, I can definitely stop here. And I think I'm going to actually do exactly that. I'm going to stop exactly here. Within a couple of minutes, we went from a simple picture which I've taken in the backyard to a nice image which is bright, colorful, summery-ish, I suppose you could even say. And we also have added some stuff in the background, which is really, really nice. Didn't take long at all, wasn't difficult. I think we need more brightness because I can't stop editing. Maybe something like that, just a tiny bit more brightness. I think that's going to be it. Now really, we have to stop now and it's going to be it. It's going to be it. And it's going to be it. All right, guys, and there you go. It doesn't take much to actually take a nice image. I mean, it doesn't have to be something for your portfolio always, but that's something which I'm going to send over to my grandparents and they're going to love the hell out of it. So I suggest, look for opportunities around you to take simple pictures and just create pretty images of your dog, of your turtle, whatever you kind of thing have, I guess. All right, I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did like the video, do not forget to hit the thumbs up button. And also, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe as it's going to help out a lot. Other than that, get out there and take the pictures yourself because that is what it's all about. And that's just half of it. Have a good day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.